certainly from early medieval times, until, of course, Napoleonic Wars. And Bridport took part in that span of history.
In 1803, the British Navy organised a blockade against France. Napoleon counteracted by signing an agreement with the Tsar Alexander I. This contract was called the Tilsit Treaty, and it especially forbade any export of hemp to England and America, thereby depriving them both of the use of hemp towards their sailcloth, rope, and other hemp products used in the war effort. Despite Napoleon's protests, Alexander I allowed merchants to smuggle hemp to Britain. This is one of the reasons why Napoleon decided to invade Russia. But the severe early winter of 1812 forced him to withdraw his troops and led to the end of his empire.
In the early 19th century, in Europe, the mysterious East became the latest rage, as did cannabis smoking. The Oriental wave influenced styles of interior decoration, clothing, and travel abroad. To be in fashion, people smoked hashish with the traditional water pipe and discovered its potent effects on lovemaking. In Paris, the famous Assassin Club was located at Hotel Pimodon. Artists and writers came here to eat Dr. Joseph Moreau de Tours' famous jam, which incorporated hashish. Among them were Théophile Gautier, Eugène Delacroix, Charles Baudelaire, Alexandre Dumas, Gérard de Nerval. Queen Victoria also used hashish. She used tincture of cannabis, a popular method for alleviating period pains. She was also prescribed morphine or laudanum, another popular remedy for many complaints.
In Amsterdam, cannabis, which had been imported from the Dutch colonies of South Africa since 1660, was smoked in coffee shops, a tradition that has survived until present day.
At the end of the 19th century, Indian migrants brought cannabis into Mexico, where it was named marijuana, and then became the symbol of Pancho Villa's rebellion with the song La Cucaracha.
Mexican farmers on their side copied the Indian water retting process to prepare the fibers. They made every kind of product, from hats to bags and carpets.
Marijuana traveled from Mexico to the southern states of America. Black people working in the cotton plantations smoked it to try and soften their harsh lives, which were aggravated by the economic aftermath of the Civil War. Marijuana fever hit the suburbs of Louisville through Dixieland jazz and swing. Marijuana was known in America as reefer or grass. Within a few years, reefer songs spread widely from the music clubs which had appeared everywhere where the immigrant black communities settled.
Have you ever met that funny reefer man? Have you ever met that funny reefer man?
Along with new developments in the hemp industry and a growing awareness of the dangers of alcohol, marijuana began to be the subject of interest in the corridors of political power.
In 1911, New Orleans and then Louisiana and Mississippi and a couple of states along the Mississippi River outlawed marijuana.
Meanwhile, alcohol was increasingly being seen as a danger to society. American women lobbied for alcohol to be banned. They succeeded with prohibition, which led to illegal speakeasies, the proceeds of which enriched criminals and resulted in violence and gang warfare. Alcohol was legalized again in 1933.
Then all of a sudden alcohol was becoming legal again, and all these agents didn't have anything to do, and Harry Anslinger thought, well, we should have a law against hemp, and so did William Randolph Hearst, and so did DuPont. And the three companies got together, and other people claiming the cotton industry joined in to outlaw hemp because it was making a huge comeback. And the reason it was making a huge comeback is that it took 200 to 300 hours to plant, harvest, and make ready for fiber acre of hemp. But all of a sudden, in the 1930s, that 200 or 300 man-hours per acre went down to 1 man-hour per acre. It was a better fiber than any other fiber and previous hemp fibers. And that was the beginning of the end of all fibers, as being the only synthetic. Nylon was the new synthetic, would have to make way for the reintroduction of hemp as an inexpensive fiber, as well as the strongest, the best, the longest lasting, and the softest fiber. The government of the United States outlawed a fiber and forced the rest of the world to swallow it. They swallowed the outlawing of the #1 fiber on Earth for 10,000 years until the 1930s, and then they outlawed it completely.
China, the hemp country, was part of the Japanese plan for military conquest.
But in official Tokyo, seat of an empire which for nearly a decade has been governed by its stern and ruthless military caste, there is more activity, more secret comings and goings than in many a year. The little men who command the world's third largest navy see in the South Pacific the richest of all colonial prizes. The Philippines, a group of 7,091 Pacific islands which, still under the protection of the U.S. flag, constitute the only major hazard to Japanese plans for new conquest in the war year of 1940. Already one important island industry, the growing and processing of Manila hemp, is almost entirely under Japanese control. And within the past few years, by intensive cultivation, Japanese immigrant farmers have increased production of the one cash crop which has long been a virtual Philippine monopoly.
The invasion of the two big hemp-producing countries, China and Philippines, was the start of hemp rationing. Hitler was also aware of the strategic importance of hemp, which was used in the making of canvas and ropes, both of which were an essential part of his war effort. In 1941, when the German army invaded Russia, it blocked Britain's supply of Russian hemp. Germany managed to develop her own hemp production, but the cultivation of this fiber, which had become so necessary in wartime, was still banned in Great Britain. In 1942, the German troops reached the center of Russia. The land continued to produce hemp, which enabled Hitler to move confidently to the next stage of his plans for the Reich. To safeguard its own supplies of hemp, Great Britain urged India to increase production. Meanwhile, war was spreading to Japan.
Within little more than a year, Japan, successfully employing once again the deceit and treachery which had so well served her in the past, had taken the final desperate plunge.
When Japan bombed Pearl Harbor, forcing the United States of America to declare war, Americans realized they were cut off from their hemp supplies. The U.S. Navy was totally dependent upon hemp for rot-resistant ropes for their ships and for many other components. The American government then decided to redevelop their hemp industry. Marijuana was legalized again and farmers received seeds. A propaganda film called Hemp for Victory was then made to encourage this war effort.